Welcome to the morning show with Chris and Mo here on Sports Empire Network. I am Chris, but as you might have guessed, that is not Mo. That is
Mo got a
Chase.
makeover this morning.
Chase is filling in for Mo this morning. Chase, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I am slowly getting back into the groove of Sports Empire Network, and so I'm excited to be on the morning show. Excited to, kind of like I said, get back into the groove of things.
Well, Chase, we are happy to have you here this morning. So we got a big show lined up today. JG will be joining us shortly as well. Always excited to have JG here on the show. Before we get things kind of going, real quickly, want to send some thoughts and prayers from all of us here at Sports Empire Network to the family of former wide receiver Mike Williams. A lot of conflicting reports are coming out this morning as to what exactly the status of his health is. We are not going to speculate on that, but obviously it's not a great situation for his family. So all of our thoughts and prayers heading over to him and his family during this time. But Chase, let's start the morning out with this. So James Harden, and as we know, it's been a roller coaster ride with James Harden, and we still don't know. We still don't know what we're going to get when the basketball season begins with James Harden, because we know he's not being traded. We know he doesn't want to be there. We know that there's people on the team who are trying to say the right things and trying to say we want him here and we want to play with him. But we know that he has, according to him, from his own mouth, he has no interest in playing for that organization with Morey there because he feels that Morey lied to him. That's neither here nor there, because we have a new story coming out involving James Harden, and now he is going after ESPN. So ESPN reporter Ramona Shelburne, who does great work as far as I can tell, she put out a story in which she reported that James Harden basically snubbed himself from the 2023 All-Star game. As you know, James Harden did not make the initial All-Star game roster, but apparently Adam Silver went to Harden and said, listen, Durant isn't going to play, so we're going to have a spot open up on the All-Star team. I would like to give it to you, but I need you to promise me that if I give you a spot on the All-Star team, you're actually going to come to the game and participate in it. Apparently, that was the offer that Silver made. Days passed without any word from Harden, who, according to Ramona, was upset about his initial snub from the All-Star team in the first place. And then as a result, Silver eventually moved on, and he added Pascal to the game in Durant's spot, and the world kept on spinning. So she drops this story, and within an hour or so after the story is published, James Harden takes to his social media with just one simple word, Chase: lies. And we all know James Harden well enough by now to know what he was referring to. So clearly he is coming out and he is saying that the story is not true. So Chase, I say this to you. Ramona didn't make this crap up. There is no way that she was sitting in her office at ESPN or sitting in her home office saying, what can I cook up about James Harden this morning? And this is the story that she dreamt up. Now, I will say this, sure, maybe it's plausible that the reason that Harden didn't get back to Adam Silver was that he wasn't pouting. You know, maybe there was some other reason. Maybe his people never got him the message. Maybe he had something else going on in his life at the time. Maybe the reason why he ignored the reach out was not because he was sitting in a corner crying, because he was upset because he didn't get put on the team in the first place. I guess that part I'm open to. The rest of it, though, Chase, it all seems pretty in line with James Harden, does it not?
Agreed. I was going to say, kind of agree with you. It's always funny to me when people are like, oh, this is, everybody's so quick to use these, hot terms like fake news. Like, oh, that's fake news. Um, and, and it, just to piggyback off of what you said, Chris, it's mind blowing to me that somebody would imply that a respectable journalist would just sit in their office and go, you know what? I have nothing better to do, nothing better to report on in the sports world than to make up this story about James Harden. Now, granted, like you said, some of the cause and effect might not be exactly how everything went down, or maybe maybe Harden doesn't see it that way through his eyes, of course, because he's the guilty party, so to speak, in the issue. When somebody says a story about me where I was in the wrong, I usually tend to be like, no, that's not true. Of course I wasn't in the wrong. And again, to piggyback off of what you said, it's perfectly in line with what we've seen from James Harden, Kevin Durant. It feels like their energy just intertwines those two individuals together, and you get the same thing from them. So no, I don't think that, like I said, if from James Harden's point of view, maybe some of that was misdirected or whatever, but to call it flat out lies, yes, people at ESPN and Fox and all these other credible news sports outlets are just sitting there going, what can we make up about these athletes today?
And let's be honest, Chase, if Ramona really wanted to report something on James Harden, she wouldn't have to make anything up. There is enough on James Harden currently as far as what the season's going to look like. Is he going to play? What it would look like if he decides to hold out. There's enough on that bone for her to not have to go out and make up some trivial story about him, being upset he wasn't picked for the All-Star game and not responding to an invitation to be an alternate. Like, there's so much better stuff out there for her to write about James Harden than that. So I have a hard time believing that the majority of that story is not accurate. Again, it could be a situation where, James just perceives the reason he didn't respond not to be that he was upset or pouting. But I feel like the majority of what she said is probably what actually took place. At this time, Chase, we're going to welcome onto the show JG. JG, what up, my guy?
Good morning, guys.
JG, happy to have you here. Let's talk a little college football, shall we? And I want to start with Coach Prime and JG. He's been all over. He's been all over the news because of the win, obviously, in their first game, because of his comments on Travis Hunter and just, what we saw Travis Hunter do in that game. But now he's also hitting the news because some of the nuances of his coaching style are coming to light. Stuff that he's apparently been doing. So it's not news for the people who know him and they know his program. It's news because he's now at he's not at Jackson State anymore. He's on a bigger stage now, and people are paying more attention to him. So they're picking up on some of his nuances and being like, oh, it's interesting that he does that. And the one that came to light yesterday was that Coach Prime does not pick captains. He picks leaders and he picks dogs. And he puts L's and D's onto the uniform to represent who is a leader and who is a dog. And Coach Prime has been on record saying that not all leaders are dogs and not all dogs are leaders. These two things are not built the same. So if you are a dog, you are a dog for a reason. And if you are a leader, you are a leader for a reason. And oftentimes those are not interchangeable. JG, I ask you this. Obviously, he's finding success. Obviously, there is a method to his madness. But is there a point where you're being different to just be different? Like, at the end of the day, not naming captains, changing what you call captains, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter what you call it or how you want to approach it. But there is this idea that, just changing things for the sake of changing things to be different in everything that you do. There comes a point where you're just doing it to be different. So in your mind, what is this? What is Coach Prime doing?
Well, hasn't that been Deion Sanders' his entire career back as a player to where we are today as a coach? Wasn't his mindset like he says, when he was in college to when he was in the pros and the NFL, I'm built different. I'm doing things the way that I know. You like me or don't like me. I mean, that was he's the whole, he had interviews after interviews with the Jerry curl and the chains and the sunglasses and everything, playing professional baseball on top of playing the NFL. I mean, that was what he was. So what we're seeing more of the personality as a coach is that is different because we don't expect coaches to be that. We expect coaches to be the CEO type, wearing the suits and kind of speaking like a politician. Deion he goes to the beat of his own drum. He's been doing that for years, for decades. I mean, so I don't think this is something we're seeing, authentic Deion Sanders as a coach. We're just not used to seeing coaches acting this way or being this way. He's not changing who he is. So he's not trying to be different just to be different. He's still being Deion Sanders. And anybody who's paid attention, as I said, anybody who's paid attention for 30 years of Deion Sanders from the time that he was a player to where we are, to the end of his career in the NFL, he was this. So, he's staying true to himself, and he continues to show, to be true to the players that he's coaching. That's the thing about being a coach. If you're authentic, your players will gravitate to you. If you're trying to be somebody you're not, well, they're going to realize, they're going to recognize it. We hear it all the time in the NFL. We hear, or even in MLB or NBA. If you're trying to be something you're not, that's why. Think about why coaches that leave the New England Patriots, all the assistant coaches that leave the New England Patriots, why they fail when they go get a head coaching job, because they try to be Bill Belichick. And those players, they tell them, Matt Patricia basically was called out by his team in his first year. You're not Bill Belichick. Don't act like Bill Belichick. You will never be Bill Belichick. Deion Sanders is being Deion Sanders. And the players love it, and they gravitate to it. And that's why he has had success at Jackson State. And I know it's 1 week, but he's having success so far in Colorado. And he's creating a buzz. He's creating an environment that is breeding success. And I think that this is going to be a trend for him as a coach at Colorado. And if there's another stop later on in his coaching career, it'll continue down that road for him, just because he is who he is, and he's not changing anything about himself. He's being authentic.
Chase, JG said it's going to be a trend for Coach Prime. Do you think it's going to be a trend for anybody else in college football? Can you see another head coach taking some of the facets of what Coach Prime does? Maybe not necessarily the dogs and the leaders, because, maybe, a guy like a Saban calling someone a dog might come across kind of weird. But can you see another coach or another program being like, man, you know what? Coach Prime was doing some things over there. Let me try to infuse some of that into my program. Do you see that kind of stuff happening? Or would that be another coach trying to impersonate Coach Prime and not being authentic to who they are? And would that not be received well, in your opinion?
Yes and no. Because we've seen Coach Prime's, not just Coach Prime, but Deion Sanders, his attitude, his aura, his swagger, if you will, it's contagious. And I 1,000% agree with everything Jonathan said. Deion has never half-assed done anything in his career. He got people. I mean, let's be honest, guys. The defensive back position, it wasn't sexy in the 90s. Like, people weren't talking about defensive backs until Deion Sanders started playing the position. That's because Deion Sanders made it sexy. He made it cool. Everybody wanted to be the wide receiver, the quarterback, the running back. And it's the same thing here. Who was talking about Jackson State before Deion Sanders went there? And now, just to raise it up much, unless you're a Colorado fan, there wasn't a whole lot of people talking about Colorado. And now Colorado is all I've seen across my phone. And Chris, you and I talked this morning. I have not been just because of stuff going on in my life, I have not been as in tune with sports as I usually am. But man, like there is Colorado and Deion Sanders coming across my phone all the time. So, yes, you're going to get, of course, you're going to get coaches. I mean, if you're a young coach, and especially if you're a young African-American coach and you watch Deion doing what he's doing, of course, you're going to want to, I mean, we have how many kids intercept a ball at the high school, collegiate, and professional level and high step into the end zone? So that answers your questions. There's going to be a lot of coaches, young, African-American, all kinds of different types that are going to look at Coach Prime and go, I want to be just like Coach Prime.
Yes, but at the same time, no, because even some, I'll go. I remember last year, even some of the HBCU schools that he coached against were not welcoming Deion Sanders. They didn't necessarily like the persona, and it was a little bit deeper. If I remember correctly, it was a little bit deeper than that because, HBCU is such a proud community, yep. And they felt that he was just using it as a stepping stone.
Yes, and that was going to be my only rebuttal to that, Jonathan, because I agree, but unfortunately, like that's a huge conversation for a different time.
Absolutely,
just because like you said, there were so many people in the HBCU that were like, "Oh, he's using it as a stepping stone," or whatever.
In a way, they were right. And in a way, they were right
to a certain degree. Like I said, though, last year, guys, Jackson State, HBCUs. There was a lot of people that focus on college football and that know college football that had no idea about Jackson State, HBCUs, had it not been for the exposure that Deion Sanders put on it. So I understand the old school mentality. That's why I mentioned, like, there's going to be a lot of young cats, a lot of young guys coaching and stuff that grew up in the 90s, watched Deion Sanders, that said, man, I might want to try that coaching style. Maybe not call my players dogs and leaders, but just kind of taking little bits here and there from it.
And that's going to be the thing. Like I said, it has to be part of the personality, though. Again, Deion did not change who he is. He's been this way from day one. So if you're a player, if you're a guy stepping into a coaching position and you have that persona, if you have that MO about you, you can do it. But you got to have that. You got to have that personality again, because these kids who play, they're smart on who they're on the personalities of their coaches. They understand that, and they can feel. And being a former player myself, I can feel when my coach is being authentic, and I can feel when my coach is lying. So these kids will know if somebody steps in and starts acting this way, they'll know if it's authentic or they know if it's full of crap. And you'll see the success if it's authentic, and you'll see the failure if it's not.
And it's interesting, guys, because if you look at the NFL today, there's a couple of big personalities in the NFL, but there's not a lot. Like Deion was a big personality. If you look at the league today, Tom Brady is known for his personality. Outside of that, Aaron Rodgers is known for his personality, good, bad, indifferent. But if you look at the league as a whole, you don't have this, large pool of players where they each have this unique, distinct personality. They're known for being a certain type of player, but Deion transcended all of that. Deion, football and the sport for Deion was 1A to his brand and everything that he was about. And he kept them on the same pedestal, and he fed into both of them equally and managed success on all sides. And you just don't see that necessarily in the game of football today. But let's pivot to this, Jonathan. We talked a couple of weeks ago how the Arizona Cardinals are not favored to win a single game this upcoming season. And I told Mo, don't worry. That's okay. Because you may not be favored to win a football game, but by golly gosh, you're favored to win Caleb Williams. And then we find out this morning they're not even favored to do that, because Caleb Williams' father came out, and he didn't mention the Arizona Cardinals by name, but he might as well have done it, because he said that, listen, he might stay in college for another year, depending on whether or not we like the team that has the overall first pick in the NFL draft. And Jonathan, what that says to me is that if the Arizona Cardinals are the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, Caleb's going back to college for another year because he's not going to be feeling that. The Arizona, Jonathan, JG, they can't win anything. The Arizona Cardinals, they literally had him locked in. They're starting a quarterback who's been in the building for like 9 days. They got rid of the only competent quarterback that knew their system. They have no roster. They have a terrible head coach who isn't proven, who no one thinks is going to do anything this year and won't be there next year. Literally, it was all lining up to get one thing accomplished this season, and that was the number 1 pick. And now it looks like if they do get the number 1 pick, they're not even going to get the best quarterback in the draft.
Well, you remember a couple of weeks ago. Remember my bold prediction was as well with the Cardinals. It was Lincoln Riley probably will follow and go to Arizona. So if you're the Arizona Cardinals and you get the number 1 pick, and you just heard Caleb Williams' dad say, "Hey, maybe not," you go make that phone call to Lincoln Riley at the end of the season and say, "Hey, what is your number? We'll make you," and it assures you will get Caleb Williams at that point. This is my perspective on it. I don't like when parents come out and speak about their sons in the draft position. Your son's the number 1 pick. He's going to be the number 1 pick. He's projected to be that. Cry me a river. Well, it's not a fair system that the worst team in the league gets the number one pick. That is actually a fair system. It is. It's been this way for decades. You want again? I've seen. Should the Super Bowl champion get the number 1 pick? Should the stronger keep getting stronger? That doesn't make any sense. You want, again, I know, the USA's mentality is, it's about competition and getting the strong and being strong and continue going in our society. It's about the strong being stronger. But in sports, you can't have only a third of the league continue to be strong and everybody else just suck, because that doesn't make money. You have to have parity to make money. You have to give teams like Arizona. You have to give teams like Jacksonville. I know Jacksonville's succeeding right now, but they've been back-to-back years of number 1 picks just recently. You have to give teams a chance to be competitive. That's how you balance out 32 teams in your league. If you only have 9 teams or 10 teams successful, you're not having 32 teams. Stop with this whining about, well, it's not fair that my son, who's going to be the number 1 pick, is going to have to go to one of the worst teams in the league and probably the most dysfunctional team in the league. That is fair. That's fair for the team. It's beyond your son in this situation. So, cry me a river that your son's going to be the number 1 pick. And he's going to get the biggest contract of the draft class. So let's just stop it on that. All right. And go and have him be successful. I get the examples he's thrown out there. Well, Baker went to a bad situation in Cleveland. Kyler went to a bad situation that happened to him in Arizona. And I'm using that in itself that my son's going to be in Arizona, but potentially that's not going to be good for him. But they were the number 1 picks. The situation can get better, i.e. Jacksonville. Things got better for Trevor Lawrence. So there's opportunities to where you have examples where Carolina had drafted Cam Newton at the number 1 pick, and things got better. So it's about how the team reacts and gets the resources to get better. And if Arizona does it the right way, big question, I get it. But if they do it the right way, your son will thrive. We have more examples and more precedent set for success by a number 1 pick with the team getting better than just the overall bust that you have out there. If your son does the work and puts it in and the team that builds around him, you'll have success. But that's an if. That's sports too. All right, we could have Kansas City all of a sudden just fall off a cliff if need be. It could happen. We don't know. So you don't know. You're basing it off of past. But say, look for your son. Look at the future. If they invest in him right way and get the resources around him, he'll be successful.
And JG, to your point, I mean, I get it that when you have a number 1 pick and they go to a bad franchise or a dysfunctional franchise, there's always the potential things aren't going to work out. But look at the talent that Caleb's being compared to. He's basically being said he's the greatest quarterback to come out since Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck went to a dysfunctional franchise. He went to a franchise that didn't have a lot of great pieces around him, and he found success. Look at the other great quarterbacks who have come out. Joe Burrow came out. Joe Burrow was highly touted coming out. He did not go to a cushy franchise in Cincinnati.
I'll say Burrow went to a worse situation in Cincinnati. Andrew Luck, the Colts were not a dysfunctional because they had Peyton Manning for so long, and then they just had the transition year with his injury. It just made it look bad. But they were still all they needed was a quarterback. That's all Indianapolis needed. I mean, you had Peyton Manning running the show for so long. So Joe Burrow went to, again, Cincinnati was the laughing stock of the NFL for so long. And yeah, hey, they invested in the right resources for him. And this is all it takes.
In Arizona, we've seen this. When they took Kyler, they were in the playoffs with Kyler. Now, granted, it wasn't sustained success. And granted, their roster has turned over since then. But even if he goes to Arizona, for all the issues they have, they can literally say, look, we drafted Kyler. Your son is a lot better than Kyler Murray. And we went to the playoffs with Kyler. And we just did that a couple seasons ago. So why can't we build a playoff team around your son? Like it's nonsensical to sit there and we don't know what caused this. This literally could have been a conversation where maybe Caleb doesn't want to go play for the Arizona Cardinals. Maybe his dad has that information. Or maybe his dad's just speaking out of pocket. We don't know that much about the Williams family to know if Caleb will make a statement like that, if dad's just, saying what he hopes is best for his son, and maybe dad's saying things like, listen, if it's going to be the Cardinals, just stay for another year. You're a god on this campus. You're making money from USC. Like, it's okay if you go in a year later. And maybe Caleb doesn't even want that. But to your point, JG, Caleb's not the one speaking. Mm-hmm. His dad's the one going out saying things. So we don't know. I'm not going to say his dad's just making stuff up, but we just don't know the full validity of the statement. Was it a side conversation? Was it the actual hard truth where they've discussed this? And because they've discussed it, dad feels like he can put it out there. That's the part where we don't really know. And JG, as you know, a lot changes in a year. He has to go through this entire college football season. Hopefully he stays healthy. We don't know where his mindset is going to be come time to declare for the NFL draft. We also don't know who the worst team in the NFL is going to be. We assume it's going to be Arizona. Maybe it's, the Las Vegas Raiders. Maybe it's the Rams. We don't know. It could be someone else potentially. I think it's going to be the Cardinals, but we don't know. Chase, do you ever, and we'll use Caleb because we're talking about it now, but do you ever see another Eli Manning situation happening in the NFL where a quarterback is drafted, doesn't want to be there, and after they're drafted to a team, they work something out to get out of there?
Absolutely. So I'll go to one of the players that started this, and I'm going to say 51,475 yards, 300 touchdowns, first ballot Hall of Famer. That's John Elway. John Elway's dad did the same thing. He said, my son's not going to play for this team. Now, we know Caleb Williams' dad didn't directly say Arizona, but at the end of the day, and to Jonathan's point, yes, I know some players have done this and whatnot, but all of these organizations that we can talk about, the organizations themselves weren't in shambles. We've talked about here on the Sports Empire Network, me, Gene, Key, everybody has talked about how much of a dumpster fire Arizona is as an organization. So when you've seen that and you see that the culture is not changing, it's kind of hard to be like, man, I really want to go play for those guys. So, I think that there needs to be some understanding there. Unfortunately for Mr. Williams, I've got some bad news for him. If he thinks Arizona is going to be the worst team this year in the draft and he wants his son to wait another year, buddy, they might be the worst team next year too. So Mr. Williams might want to tell his baby boy to switch to baseball.
JG, before we get you out of here, I didn't want to bring this up until, they were over 500. But the New York Yankees are over 500. They have won 8 out of 10. They are only 6.5 games back in the wild card. What are the odds? because now they play the teams ahead of them. They play the Red Sox. They play Toronto. They have games against the teams that they would have to have come back down towards them. I'm just saying, it looks like we got a hope and a prayer.
Chris, man, you're making me sad for you.
Come on.
This is where Yankee fans are now, is hoping to make the wild card.
Yes, it is.
It makes me so sad, but at the same time, I can't stop smiling hearing that, just because. I mean, I love the desperation of Yankee fans, and that's where we're at.
That's where we are.
I don't see them making the playoffs. I don't, and I get they're hot right now, winning 8 out of the last 10. There's still so many flaws on this team. Even if you make the postseason, are you really going to sit here and tell me that this team is going to make a run in the postseason with the pitching they have? I don't.
If they make the postseason, yes, I am going to. If they complete this comeback and get into the wild card, JG, I will sit here and tell you to your face, miracles happen, and the stars are aligning for the Yankees.
If they make the playoffs, Jonathan, Chris is going all in.
All in at that point.
It makes me so sad for you, but at the same time, when it crashes and burns, it just makes it feel. Again, I'll have a glass of champagne in your honor for when they do get eliminated for in the postseason, but for the postseason. Now, like I said, this team is they're not built to be a postseason team. There's still too many flaws. The pitching is again, I don't see this pitching staff carrying this team into the postseason, or even in making a run. Their offense is too up and down. And again, you can be hot right now. Great. Like that's just a short-term burst. We've seen teams catch fire, here and there, and then come back down to earth. At some point, this Yankee team is going to come back down to earth and be who they are. Are they going to catch Toronto, Seattle, Tampa? I don't think so. They're going to, Rangers are right in this ship, and then the Rangers are the same thing. Their pitching is letting them down right now completely. I talked to somebody about, they have more blown saves. Texas Rangers has more blown saves than they do converted saves. If they would have had at least 10 of those blown saves thrown into converted, they're probably one of the top teams in the American League. It shows how important pitching is still in today's game. And I know offense has been really what's carried this season, has been the focal point in conversation, but pitching still matters. And if you don't have pitching, Tampa Bay still has good pitching despite Shane McClanahan being out for the season. Seattle's pitching is been more consistent of recent time in the second half, and that's why they are where they're at right now. Toronto's up and down. That's the one team that I could sit here and say that their pitching's up and down, but they're able to carry it up because their offense has been good throughout this. Rangers pitching's been down, but their offense has been good, but they're been on a slide right now. That's why they're falling out of the AL West and even the wild card. Boston, I have no hope for Boston, so I'll give you a little bit of happiness right there, Chris. I have no hope for Boston. This is the same boat. Their pitching is not good. Their offense is inconsistent to be able to, and they're 3 of 7, and they're 3 and 7 their last 10 right now as well. So there's too many hurdles for this Yankees team to have to try to climb and jump over to get to the wild card race. They're 6.5 back. We're almost into the middle of September. That's a big hurdle. That's a big hurdle to have, and I just don't see this Yankees team having enough juice to really climb that ladder and be able to get to a wild card position.
Jonathan, you are going to see me like 7 notches higher when I see you next week if the Yankees are within 5 and they've passed Boston. Like that's the next mini hurdle as far as I'm concerned. To get it under 5, get ahead of Boston.
But I just said Boston has no chance either. And you're saying, well, if we pass Boston, I was like, you should pass Boston. Boston was predicted to be the worst team in the American League East. And the fact that
they're ahead of us right now. We need to get past Boston.
What does that tell you about the Yankees? What does that tell you?
We're not good, but there's still hope.
So then that means, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to bring you down. That just means you get another year of Aaron Boone.
They already said that. They already said he's not going anywhere.
And another year of Brian Cashman.
They already said that too. They said this weeks ago before they got hot. We already knew this garbage was coming back.
If they miss it, if they miss the postseason, you have a chance where that Steinbrenner's sons may say, okay, maybe we don't need this. You have a chance. They make the postseason, you're having another year of Aaron Boone and the clown show that has become the New York Yankees for 2024.
What we needed was the kids to come up and the team not to still win. I think that would have sealed the deal with at least Cashman or Boone. But once they bring the kids up and then they start winning, and now things are getting a little tight, and even if they don't make the wild card, as long as they stay above 500 for the rest of the end of the year here, you know what they're going to do, JC. They're going to be like, look at Cashman got these kids in here. They're here because of him. Let's let Boone roll. But you know what they're going to do. You already see it. You already see it. And then Hal's going to look at it and be like, the money I'm going to save because we're going to start all these kids? You already know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I do. And you're going to be in the same boat next year. Because, again, it's what depth do you have in your rotation?
None.
You don't. And you don't. So what? And what? Let me ask: what prospect you have that's a pitcher coming up? Because they've called up position players. Okay, then they've called up position players. So who's pitching with Garrett Cole next year? You still trusting Luis Severino?
Yeah, Severino, Rodon.
Is Jermaine Duran going to be out of rehab?
No.
I mean, so my goodness. Who's the starting pitchers other than Garrett Cole next year? And where's the youth movement for the pitching side of it?
No,
because
old
that's
pitchers only.
Because that's the thing, and that's where I'm going with it. Look at the teams that are in the top right now. Braves have pitchers who are in their 20s. Orioles have pitchers. I know Kyle Gibson is part, but the Orioles have pitchers that are in their 20s right now that they're competing and pushing for. All right, they made the trade for Jack Flaherty as well, but they didn't give up a lot to get Jack Flaherty, which, my goodness, they stole Jack Flaherty away from the Cardinals. Tampa Bay, and I know that Tampa's not as the dominant team we were expecting them to be that they were at the beginning of the season, but their pitchers are all in the 20s. So the youth movement of pitching is now. The older pitchers, I mean, you still have a handful still out there, but the older pitchers are not around that much anymore. You have to have youth in your rotation to be competitive. Yankees are going in the opposite direction right now. They're you have Garrett Cole. Okay, yeah, Garrett Cole is your number one. That's a damn good number one. But are you trusting Luis Severino? Are you trusting Herman Duran? Carlos Rodon, who didn't pitch much this year because of injuries, and is he going to all of a sudden get healthier next year? Probably not.
They're going to go get Max Scherzer. Just watch.
Oh.
You know it's dumb, but then you're like, you're right. They probably are going to go get a Max Scherzer.
You're right. I think that would be, but that is a Yankee move because it's about star power. It is about you're 100%. It's about star power in New York. It's about the name more than the talent. And if you can get young talent that can make you winners, great. That's what you should be doing. That's what the teams that are winning right now are doing. The Yankees want star power, but the problem is now is do you have the owners that want to spend the money on stars? No, they don't. They've been burned by Giancarlo Stanton right now. They're not getting as good as Garrett Cole has been. He hasn't led them to a World Series, and that's in essence in New York. And you tell me if I'm wrong, Chris. That's failure as a number one pitcher in New York. If you don't lead them to a World Series, you failed. And so that contract's not worth it to the ownership of the Yankees. Aaron Judge, injury-riddled year this year. Is this going to be which that is his trend? 2022 was an anomaly. It was a contract year. I think it was an anomaly what he did last year. The trend of who he is in his career is injury-riddled star, but he's injury-riddled. They're going to get burned by that contract here pretty soon. You overpay guys that are older guys, and you're not able to compete with these younger teams. They're going to try to do the same thing. They're going to spend money on older guys because they feel like they're in a win-now mode. And then they're going to go and they're going to be the same team, a 500, below 500 team competing for a wild card spot. And the Bronx are not going to be happy about it because they don't want a wild card spot. They want to be the number one team in the American League, winning division titles and competing for World Series titles, not competing for wild cards.
All I'm saying is if it's under 5 games next week, Jonathan, you're getting a more amped up Yankee fan. All right. So we'll see what the weekend brings. But I'm looking at the schedule. I'm feeling pretty confident about it. So I think it's going to be under 5 games. I see you again on Monday or Tuesday.
Who's their series this weekend?
Well, they're wrapping up against the Tigers. So, that should be another win. And then they got Milwaukee.
I'm looking at it real quick here. They got Milwaukee. They played 4 against Boston. They play 3 against Pittsburgh. So that 4 against Boston, again, if they can take 3 or 4 against Boston, they need to take 2 or 3 in Milwaukee. I don't think they will because Milwaukee pitches very well. They got to take 3 or 4 against Boston. They got to sweep Pittsburgh.
And now we're talking business because now we got 6 against Toronto.
If they can go, let's see what I just said, 2 of 3. If they have 3 or 4, so that's 5 of 7. Sweep Pittsburgh, 8 of 10. So if they go 8 of 10, these next 3 series, get ready. Then I say it's a different story.
All right.
But that's
it's a tall task. I didn't say it was going to be easy.
That's a lot, though.
It is. I agree. But we'll see. We will see what happens. All right, JG.
Hey,
pleasure,
it could happen.
As always. It can happen. JG, before you get out of here, LSU going to bounce back this weekend?
God, I hope so. We're playing Grambling State, so I mean, you have this is your in-state, the in-state schools that you compete against. Get yourself figured out against Grambling. Put up 40, 50 points on them. Figure out how to use Harold Perkins better. Mason Smith comes back on the defense as well. Kind of regroup, and this should be a game where they put 40, 50 points on and win by 35 and kind of feel a little bit better after this loss that they had Florida State. So my goodness, they better figure it out.
Who do you like tonight, Lions or Chiefs?
I am going with the Lions on the upset.
Oh, okay.
Lions with the upset, and with the Travis Kelce news, that kind of makes it a little bit easier to say the Lions could probably get it figured out. I don't. If this was week 7, that's what I'm saying. If this is week 6 or week 7, I'm going Chiefs because we'll know a little bit more about the offense with the receivers they have now. That's basically a new group of receivers with Rashee Rice, Justin Ross, Kadarius Toney. If he's healthy enough to be able to go, Sky Moore is going to get a little bit more opportunity with this group. It's kind of a newer receiving core, especially if you don't have Travis Kelce. You're going to really have to test those young guys at receiver. If this was week 6, I'd have a better idea, and I would say Chiefs in that. But because it's week 1, we don't know. I'm going to go with the Lions. It's a low risk, high reward. If I'm wrong, well, okay, I'm wrong. The Chiefs were supposed to win. But if I'm right and the Lions win, I'm a damn genius. So I'm going with Lions.
That's right. That's how you pick them, sir. All right, JG, as always, it's a pleasure. He's calling it now. LSU bounce back. Detroit Lions tonight. We will see you here next week, sir. Have a good one.
I appreciate it, guys.
Chase, obviously, you may not agree with.
No, not only do I not agree, I thought it was stupid, but I kept my mouth shut. I'm playing nice this morning.
But
I took my medicine.
We're going to break down that game here in just a few minutes. But before we get to that, Chase, let's talk a little bit about the San Francisco 49ers. They signed Joey Bosa finally. Maybe the Kansas City Chiefs can look over here and be like, okay, so you do value your best defensive player. Got it. They signed Joey Bosa to a new deal, making a ton of money. He didn't just reset the market. He is the market now. He is so far ahead of number 2 in the market. Chase, what does this do for Chris Jones? Because he has to look at this deal, and I understand it's not apples to apples, but he has to look at it and be like, hello, all I want is a raise. They figured it out over there. Super Bowl favorite in the NFC. We're a Super Bowl favorite in the AFC. Where's my money? Show me the money.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Chris, I don't like this at all as a Chiefs fan. Do I think that the Chiefs will be fine without Chris Jones? Yes. I don't think Chris Jones is going to make or break the Kansas City Chiefs. But I do think that he was a detrimental player that they should have offered him a deal. You're wearing a Miami hat, so let me take you back a couple of years to Tyreek Hill. If the Chiefs would have cut Tyreek Hill a deal and a contract before, I don't know who it was. It might have been Cooper Kupp. It was a big name wide receiver who had got a big contract. And if the Chiefs would have signed Tyreek Hill to a deal before that deal was cut, then everything would have been fine. But because they waited until after one of those big name wide receivers got a deal, Tyreek Hill said, well, now I'm looking at this deal. Now, like you said, Chris Jones just said the other day, he said, hey, I just want to raise, and that's fine. But I can't imagine him being of the essence of I just want to raise after seeing the Joey Bosa contract. If Chris Jones sees the Joey Bosa contract and talks to his agent, I'm not too hopeful that Chris Jones will sign a new deal. What I am concerned about is his willingness, or at least his vocal willingness, to sit out if he doesn't get a deal. So Chris Jones would be a huge hole if he doesn't play tonight. Supposedly he is. I haven't heard anything for sure, but if Chris Jones doesn't play, then the Detroit Lions are going to run the ball all over the Kansas City Chiefs. With Chris Jones, the Detroit Lions are going to run the ball all over the Kansas City Chiefs. So, like I said, I really hoped that they were going to get a deal done before this week, just to make it happen. And it's weird. Because we're talking about a difference of $8 to $9 million. Sign the freaking deal, But now, like I said, with the Bosa situation, you've now reset it, and now the conversation talks might be over.
And that's the risk you run. I mean, let's be fair. Kansas City knew that Bosa was out there. Kansas City knew that Bosa wanted a new deal. They may not have known he was going to get the deal he was going to get. I understand that. And that's probably what they were sitting here thinking. They were probably thinking, even if Bosa signs before we get Jones to sign, it's not going to be anything crazy. It's not going to reset the market. It's going to be a situation where we can offer something comparable that we're so comfortable with and get him to the table. Well, that's the risk you run by waiting. So you chose to wait. Bosa got a deal first. The deal is not something you want to pay Chris Jones. It's not something in the ballpark of what you want to pay Chris Jones. And it's not something that financially you should be paying him because of the situation and the setup of your team. So now you find yourself in a situation where if he comes to the table asking for that money or more than that money or right below that money, you have to say no, because it wouldn't be financially smart of you to give him that deal. So now what is your expectation now? Well, now your expectation is you try to get him for what you thought he originally wanted, which seems a little bit unrealistic after the Bosa deal. You hope that he'll just play this season and we can talk about it at the end of the season, which he's already said he's willing to sit out till week 8, but maybe he will just play through it, and you can have some dialogue and we'll see what happens. Or you're looking at the end of his time with the Kansas City Chiefs because you're just not going to get to a number that he wants to be at. And then at some point you have to make that decision of, do we cut ties and we get something back from him? Do we sell him while his stock is high? What does that situation look like? And like you said, Chase, this all could have been handled a week ago if they just brought him in, gave him the $7 to $9 million that they were apart from, and got the number he wanted, and we would have been good to go. We could have avoided all of this. But they didn't, so here we are, and we'll see how it plays out. Speaking of players who are not going to be there, obviously Travis Kelce he's questionable for tonight. This morning I saw he was going to test out the knee. I haven't seen anything come across yet about whether or not he has done that, so more to come. But we know that Cooper Kupp will not be playing for the Rams week 1. Chase,
my fantasy team is suffering right now. So
which is a bigger loss? Kelce not playing for the Chiefs, who he's clearly their number one option at receiver, or Kupp not playing for the Rams, he's clearly their number one option at receiver as well. Which is a bigger loss?
So, and as a Chiefs fan, I think that I'm more, dived in than a lot of people. Obviously Jonathan, knows his stuff and whatnot. And Jonathan's not the only one. I'm just picking on Jonathan because he was just on the show. But I'm going to be honest with you, Chris. I don't think it's that big of a loss. Again, to talk about the Tyreek Hill situation in Miami, everybody said that Mahomes is not going to do it. All he has now is Travis Kelce.
And he did it.
And
he did it better. He was better.
Yeah. And he did it with some of the guys that Jonathan named. Sky Moore, MVS. Yes, there's some new weapons. That's not a disadvantage. This is what separates Patrick Mahomes from Josh Allen, from Joe Burrow, from those all those guys. If you take those people away from Patrick Mahomes will find other people to throw to. We've seen it. Hey, he's shown us. I'm from Missouri, Chris. I'm from the show me state, and Patrick Mahomes has shown us in the entire NFL what will happen if you take his weapons away. Is he'll find a fourth string or a practice squad guy that gets pushed up to the team to throw the ball to and catch passes and touchdown passes from. It's what happens. So I'm detrimentally worried about Travis Kelce missing more games. But if it's just a hyperextension, then cool. If it's no ACL, then I'm not extremely worried about it.
What does the Rams offense look like without Cooper Kupp?
They look like shambles with Cooper Kupp. They're going to look like shambles without Cooper Kupp. So the only people that are going to, or the only people that will suffer more than Los Angeles Rams fans are people who own Cooper Kupp in fantasy football, i.e. me.
So one of the biggest question marks going into tonight's game, aside from Travis Kelce, it's going to be the Detroit Lions defense. So much has been made about the additions that they made to their defense. They were a unit that was coming along throughout the season last year. They've added some parts in some key spots, and now they're projected to potentially be a top 10 defense in the league this season. Now, Chase, we know that when it comes to Mahomes, Burrow, Josh Allen, they get theirs. Just like in the NBA, when you have a great player like a LeBron or a Steph or a Kobe, 9 times out of 10, they get theirs. And it's just trying to take away other things around them to limit the damage they're going to do. You're not usually going to have a defense that shuts Mahomes down and they only score 7 points. Now, sure, he might have a game like that every couple of seasons where he's just off and things aren't going right. But generally speaking, if you look at Mahomes' track record, you look at Brady's track record, even when they play elite defenses, they still put up stats. Now, he may not go 400 yards and 5 touchdowns against an elite defense, but he's still going to do Mahomes things. So with that being said, the Lions know going into tonight's game, they're not going to shut down Patrick Mahomes, but they're looking to contain Patrick Mahomes. They're looking to make him a little uncomfortable. They're looking to maybe not give up the super easy stuff and make him work a little bit. And more importantly, on the offensive side of the ball, they're looking just to keep Mahomes off the field by sustaining their drives. And over the course of Mahomes' career, Chase, I think you could agree, the best defense against Patrick Mahomes is not having Patrick Mahomes on the field. When Patrick Mahomes has to sit on the sideline and watch the other team's offense because they're churning out 10, 12, 14 play drives, that's the best defense because Mahomes can score in 13 seconds. We've seen it. Mahomes can score in a minute and a half. We've seen it. But when Mahomes only touches the ball a handful of times on offense because the other team has held the ball for so freaking long, that's a starting point. If you can do that and have a top 10 defense, now we're putting together a game plan to really slow down and hinder the Chiefs. So let's start with the running game. Do you think that the Detroit Lions are going to have a consistent enough running game tonight to put together 8, 10, 12, 14 play drives that are going to eat up huge chunks of time off the clock to keep Mahomes on the sidelines?
I do. I think if I don't think it's going to be as close as a lot of people think it's going to be. The reason why is because, and I was looking at this, I was looking at this, preparing for this game tonight. The Detroit Lions finished, their pass defense finished in the bottom, like they were 24th or 25th last year. You can't convince me that they've done enough to land themselves in the top 10 from that last year. And you're going up against one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL throwing the ball. So I think Mahomes is going to carve them up. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be a close game. But to piggyback off of what you said, if the Detroit Lions want to beat the Kansas City Chiefs tonight, they need to utilize the run game. Because like I said earlier, they can run the ball down our throat with or without Chris Jones. If it's without Chris Jones, it's going to be a long day. This could be a high-scoring game. But I would take over on the points. But again, I just with both teams having bad defenses based off of the quarterback that's facing them, I don't know if it's going to come down to Matthew Stafford, or not Matthew Stafford. It's going to come down to Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes.
Well, that was my next question. Can Goff win a shootout? Because if it gets into a situation, let's say that, early in the game, the Lions are kind of controlling it a little bit. They're running the ball, but because their defense on the back end is so terrible, like you said, Mahomes is going out there. So let's say they go 12, 14 plays, they score a touchdown. Well, then Mahomes comes out in 4 plays and scores a touchdown. Well, that's an issue because you just took all that time off the clock thinking you did something great. And then in, 2.5 minutes, Mahomes makes you feel like garbage because he just tore apart your defense. And now he's back on the sideline. So now the running game tails off a little bit. So now we're going to the passing game. Maybe they don't score. Mahomes scores another touchdown. Now the running game is going to be moved away from even more. That's inevitably going to happen. There's going to come a point, I feel, tonight where the Chiefs offense is going to be humming along. They're going to be scoring points. And Detroit's going to have to pull back from the running game and try to match the point total through the air. Can Jared Goff not win a shootout with Patrick Mahomes? Can he hang in there and keep the game close once the Chiefs get to 21 or 28 points? Can he hang that offense in there in where the Rams or the defense knows they're going to pass the ball? Can Goff be that guy? Or once it gets into shootout mode, it's over?
So I don't think it will happen tonight, but to answer your question, he can. He absolutely can. And he can beat him too. Because November 19th, 2018, Monday Night Football, Patrick Mahomes against Jared Goff with the Los Angeles Rams, a total of 105 points were scored. So Jared Goff can absolutely do it. And I was going to make the argument that maybe Jared Goff doesn't have the same weapons that he had in Los Angeles. Now, granted, he had a great head coach in Sean McVay, but looking here, he had Brandon Cooks, Josh Reynolds, Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee, and of course Todd Gurley catching passes plus rushing. So yes, Jared Goff can win a shootout with Patrick Mahomes. I just don't think that's going to happen tonight.
All right, Chase. I think we know where you're going, but final pick. Obviously, you're taking the Chiefs. Give me a score.
Let's go 34-17.
I think so. I've been back and forth on this, and I said this last night during Wire to Wire. I was in the comments for Gene's show. If you haven't checked out Wire to Wire, make sure you do that. Chase, I really think this is one of those situations where everything is just swaying so heavily towards Detroit. I think they're going to get blown out. I think it's going to be competitive in the first quarter, and then I think it's going to end up being a 14 or a 20-point win for the Chiefs. I just think we see this all the time in the NFL. You see all this talk where all the reasons why this team's going to take down this what should be a favorite, and it gets so hyped and so built up. And we saw Tom Brady do this all the time. You saw people, well, this team's going to take down the Patriots, and it's a perfect. They were built to beat the Patriots. They're built to take down Bill Belichick. And what would happen? The Patriots would go out and roll them. And it happens all the time. And the Chiefs are essentially the new Patriots. The only difference is they score more points. So, and they have less defense. But that's what they are. They are the new Patriots. So you have all these talking heads. Well, I mean, look at this defense. Look, he's a different kind of coach. This coach is built different. He can take down an offense like a Patrick Mahomes offense. And you hype it all up, and you line up all these reasons as to why it's destiny for this to be the spot where the team falls. But the cream always rises to the top. And Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback in the NFL today. And he's going to go down in history as one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL of all time. And he's going to roll him by 20. And then we're going to be like, oh, Patrick Mahomes, he did it again. That guy. And it doesn't mean the Lions aren't going to be good this year. It doesn't mean the Lions aren't going to contend for their division. And I know some people are saying, well, this is the Super Bowl for the Lions. No, it's not. They are the legitimate contender to win their division. This is not a team that, won 4 games last year. They got like a new quarterback and a new piece, and like they're going to win maybe 6 or 7 this year. So this is their big moment on the big. No, they are picked. They're favorited nationally to win their division. Their season is much more than this game. They can go out tonight, Chase, and lose 59-0, and it means nothing because they can still go win the division in a weak NFC and have success in the playoffs. So don't sit here and devalue the Detroit Lions like this is all their week 1 is all they're playing for this year. That's nonsense. It would be great to start their season out knocking off Kansas City. But if they don't, it changes nothing for them. Unlike, I would argue, a team like the New York Jets, the darling of the NFL, where they have Buffalo on Monday night. If the Jets go out there and lay an egg against the Bills, that's an issue because now you've lost your first game with Aaron Rodgers. Who knows why you lost it? I would probably guess offensive line. Maybe it was chemistry with the receivers. I don't know. But you lost your first game with Aaron Rodgers. Your next 5 games are absolutely brutal, and you lost a division game. So if the Jets go out and lose week 1, there's going to be some concern. If the Lions lose tonight, Lion fans aren't going to care. It's not going to be the end of the world. The sky's not going to be falling. Just like if the Chiefs were to lose tonight, it wouldn't be the end of the world for them either. Because they would look at it and say, well, Chris Jones wasn't here. Travis Kelce wasn't here. It's the first game of the season. The Lions had all this hype. And then when we look at our division, we're still better than those 3 teams. Like this, win or lose, no matter who comes out tonight, nothing changes for them.
It's week 1.
Correct. Unless you're Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. That's all I'm saying. If you are Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets, you need to win week 1.
I think just for, because of the media that surrounds New York, he's got to, and just to kind of go back to what you were saying, Chris, if Chris Jones plays tonight and if Travis Kelce was healthy, I said it a month ago that we would blow out the Detroit Lions. And I think we would, but I think with those 2 little things there, I still, like I said, I'm taking 34-35-17. I still think it's going to be a game where the Chiefs it's not close. But I still think Detroit, would put up a fight, like I said, because they have a good running game. They have really nice running backs, without Chris Jones, like I said. But I do agree with you with the New York media and the way that the NFL focuses on New York and all of that hype that has been there. If the Jets don't win against Buffalo on Monday night, there's going to be a huge talking point for the following week after that of, is Aaron Rodgers still that good? Did New York make a mistake? Etc. So
And Buffalo fan, don't worry. I think you're in the same exact boat. If you lose to the New York Jets, I think you have the same pressure on you because now the narrative is the Jets are for real. You might be the second or third best team in that division. I will say third because I think the Dolphins are better than you. And now you have to go play Miami 3 weeks later without your best defensive player, with the prospect of losing 2 division games in the first month of the season. With all your Stephon Diggs issues, with your roller coaster of a quarterback in Josh Allen. So Buffalo fan, don't think it's just a must win for the New York Jets. I think this game is critically important for both of those teams. Now, as a Dolphin fan, do I want to lose to the Chargers week 1? Absolutely not. Am I nearly as upset if I do? No, because the Chargers are a good team. The Chargers are going to probably be a playoff team or in playoff contention. You don't win all those games. But if I'm a Jet or a Bills fan, you can't lose to that team week 1 in division and not have a question of, okay, where are we and how can we rebound from this? Because once, I don't care who it is, Jets or Bills, whoever loses, now they go to week 2, and if you're the Jets, I believe you play Dallas week 2. So if you lose week 1 to Buffalo and then you're going Dallas week 2, now you're saying we can't start 0-2. We cannot start 0-2 with a division loss. Now that almost becomes a must-win game week 2, which sounds ridiculous, but it's true.
But if you and kind of going back to what you said, Chris, the number one issue with the Jets, or the question mark with the Jets, that would or could be the reason why they lose to Buffalo would be their offensive line. And if you're going into Dallas to face Dallas against the pass rush in Dallas, starting 0-2 would be looking likely.
And if you start 0-2, now it's a whole different narrative in New York.
Yep.
Because
now you gave up so much to bring Aaron Rodgers to New York to do the exact same thing that Aaron Rodgers was doing in Green Bay last year.
Because if you start 0-2, Buffalo beat you week 1. I think Buffalo has either the Raiders or the Commanders week 2. That's a win for Buffalo. So now you're 0-2, Buffalo's 2-0. You're at least 2 games back in the division. And now it's a whole different ballgame. So again, I said all that not to hate on Jet fan. I said all that to point out the fact that not all week 1 games are built the same. And 9 times out of 10, week 1 doesn't matter. It is what it is. But there are those moments where week 1 is bigger. And if you're a Jets fan or a Bills fan, this is one of those moments. So hopefully they're buckled up for Monday night. But Chase, that brings us to the end of the morning show here on a Thursday. As you can see by my tag, it does say all hail Mahomes. So I am riding Kansas City tonight. I do think they're going to get that victory. Chase, thank you so much for filling in for Mo. Always Absolutely. A pleasure to have you on and to talk with you. If you liked what you saw here this morning, you better be back tomorrow morning. But more importantly, you better be joining us on Sunday for the Sunday morning drive. We are going to get you prepared for everything that you need for football on Sunday. Make sure you are checking that out here on Sports Empire Network. On behalf of myself and Chase, Mo, who is not here, JG, who was here a little bit earlier, everyone who was in the chat this morning, thank you for making us a part of your morning, and we will see you right here tomorrow.